Hello everyone, this is Listy McGee, and I was thinking, because the 4th season of History Channel's Vikings is still a few months away, I would list my top 10 Viking movies, just to tide you all over until then. For this list, I didn't include TV series, documentaries, or movies featuring Norse mythology, but no Vikings. And just a heads up to all you history nerds, I didn't rank these films by how historically accurate they are, but rather how much I enjoyed them. Also, just a warning, I'm gonna butcher some of these pronunciations. So grab your mead-filled drinking horns and let's get started. Number 10, Starabasen, an ancient tale when the sun was god, or Army of Valhalla. This 2003 film by Jerzy Hoffman is set in 9th century Poland and follows the conniving Prince Popiel, who eliminates all the rival chiefs in his kingdom to secure power for his son. Only the nobleman Piestin can lead a revolt against the prince. But when Piestin is pursued by assassins, the hunter and former Viking Zemuit saves him. The two join forces and lead the local tribes against the prince and a party of Vikings he hires to defeat them. Ouchie! And all this while Zemuit courts the beautiful pagan priestess, Zuia. It may have the production values of a mid-90s episode of Xena Warrior Princess, but Starabasen has some charm. It's based on one of the Polish chronicles, and the story plays out like a simple legend or fairy tale, and is actually quite enjoyable in its simplicity. The good guys are good, the bad guys are bad. The damsel is in distress, but don't worry, she's also a strong, independent damsel. Number 9, Beowulf and Grendel, the 2005 film by Icelandic director Sturla Gunnarsson. Beowulf and Grendel is based on the epic poem Beowulf, credited with being the oldest surviving epic poem written in English. Although set before the Viking Age in the 6th century, it features a group of seafaring Scandinavian adventurers, so it's close enough. When the Danish king Hrothgar's mead hall is terrorized by a monster called Grendel, he calls on the legendary Geatish hero, Beowulf. Beowulf confronts the monster. Well, actually he's more like a big hairy guy in this film. But in the process, Beowulf begins to understand Grendel's motives.
Why would he fight me?
Why should he? You've done nothing to him.
In this way, Beowulf and Grendel deviates dramatically from the original text. It makes you empathize more with Grendel, who is only seeking vengeance for his own father. After fighting Grendel, Beowulf's men are attacked by Grendel's mom. If you mess with Grendel, you also mess with his mom. So Beowulf must hunt her down as well. However, the more Beowulf learns about Grendel, the more he begins to doubt his own cause. Despite this melancholy interpretation of the epic poem, Beowulf and Grendel has some definite strengths, like the beautiful locations, the costume design, as well as the performances by Gerard Butler, Stellan Skarsgård, and the rest of the cast. Beowulf and Grendel is somewhat off-putting and disturbing, but in an interesting, memorable way. Number 8, Outlawed, the Saga of Gisli. This 1981 film, based on the Icelandic saga, is directed by August Gudmundsson. Set in 10th century Iceland, it follows a seriously dysfunctional family of Vikings. Two sets of brothers, related by marriage, and their respective wives are drawn into a blood feud, when Asgerd, the wife of Thorkel, reveals her love for Thorkel's brother-in-law, Vestin. Vestin is murdered during the night by an unseen assassin, and because Gisli draws the spear from his chest, he must take the vengeance. However, Gisli doesn't seek vengeance on Thorkel, who happens to be his own brother, but instead on his other brother-in-law, Thorgrim. Yep, that's some convoluted Viking family drama. Once Gisli has murdered Thorgrim, he goes on the run, and repeatedly evades capture by a gang of pursuers, seeking Viking justice. Of all the films on this list, the Saga of Gisli has the most authentic feel, from the simplistic costumes, to the longhouses, to the customs and rituals they enact. This film is probably the most accurate depiction of Viking Age life on this list. The only reason it doesn't rank higher is the fact that it's quite slow, and unless you're familiar with the saga it's based on, somewhat hard to follow. You almost need to take notes in order to remember who's who and how they're related to everyone else. Number 7, Dragon's Fang, or however you say, Aina Kamniak Rastut Derivia. This 1985 Soviet film from directors Stanislav Rostotsky and Knut Andersen follows a young Slavic boy named Kuksha, whose village is raided by a band of Vikings. In Soviet Russia, you raid Viking! Sorry, I couldn't help myself. The Vikings take Kuksha captive and bring him back to their village in Norway, where he soon becomes an adopted son of the chief and an integral part of the village. Things go awry when Kuksha becomes involved with Signy, who is betrothed to Sigurd. Kuksha's adopted brother Harold helps him deal with Sigurd, but when Kuksha has the opportunity to return home, Harold attempts to imprison him in the village. Kuksha is forced to choose between Signy and his adopted family, or returning to his homeland. Although Dragon's Fang looks like it was shot a few decades earlier than it actually was, it is one of the better Viking films, simply because it's so chock full of very, for lack of a better term, Viking-y things. For instance, this ship-to-ship battle, or this epic shot of a longboat pulling into a Norwegian fjord, or the village life during the winter. Dragon's Fang has pretty much all your Viking-y bases covered. Number 6, In the Shadow of the Raven. From another Icelandic director, Hrafn Gunnlaugsson, this 1988 film is the second in his Viking trilogy. Shadow of the Raven is essentially a Viking Age adaptation of Romeo and Juliet, or Tristan and Isolde, only directed by the Icelandic Sergio Leone. It follows Thrasti, who returns to Iceland from abroad, only to find his family in a feud over a whale carcass. Good eatin'. He falls in love with the rival family's daughter, Isolde, but she believes he's responsible for her father's death. And to make matters even more complicated, she is promised to rival suitor, Hjörleifr, who Trusty must battle for love and vengeance. Despite the odd use of throwing knives and, saunas as weapons, this film also brings a lot of authenticity with its Icelandic setting. The scenery is spectacular in places, and the star-crossed lover's story is compellingly portrayed by the actors. It's kind of like a rom-com, only with Vikings and no comedy. Number 5, Beowulf, the 2007 animated film by Robert Zemeckis. At this point you already know the basics of Beowulf. There's a badass from Geatland, his name is... He goes to Denmark to help a king who's having a serious problem with a monster in his meat hall. However, in Zemeckis' version, the story follows the original text much closer, at least in the first act. Once Beowulf dispatches Grendel, he then has to deal with Grendel's mom, who in this version happens to be a naked, gold-covered CGI version of Angelina Jolie, with a tail, and high heels. Essentially, she's a mother that Beowulf would like to fight. At this point in Zemeckis' Beowulf, the film deviates from the original text and delves into a more intrigue-heavy plot. Beowulf becomes king, but must ultimately pay the price for his ascension to glory and confront his past. This version of Beowulf delves deeper into the title character, revealing his flaws and shortcomings. The animated visuals can be really amazing in places, although they may suffer from the frozen CGI puppet face problem. If you can get by that major flaw, the action sequences and all-star voice casts make the film a very entertaining insight into the original epic poem.
I am Beowulf!
Number 4, When the Raven Flies. This 1985 film is the first in Hrafn Gunnlaugsson's Viking trilogy. Beginning in Viking Age Ireland, a party of raiding Vikings murder the father of an Irish family and take their daughter as a slave, but spare their son. Cut to Iceland 20 years later, and a mysterious stranger appears, killing Vikings left and right with throwing knives and his trusty staff spear. You guessed it, the stranger is the Irish son, known as Gest, and has shown up for a straightforward revenge plot. Gest cunningly pits two Viking clans against each other, but his plan is derailed when he's betrayed by his own sister. As with Gunnlaugsson's other films, the Sergio Leone influences here are palpable. This film in particular parallels Fistful of Dollars right down to the trumpet playing in the climax. As with Yojimbo, Fistful of Dollars, or Last Man Standing. Well, not so much Last Man Standing. The lead character of When the Raven Flies has epic moments of badassery. And as always, you just can't beat the Icelandic backdrop. Number 3, Valhalla Rising. This 2009 film by Nicholas Winding Refn is set in Scotland during the Norse transition to Christianity. It follows a mute slave named One-Eye, who's made to fight to the death in a primitive blood sport. When One-Eye gets the drop on his captors, he slays them and embarks on a journey with a boy who tags along. The pair soon meet up with a band of newly Christianized Vikings to recruit One-Eye and the boy on a crusade to the Holy Lands. However, they never reach their intended destination, and instead what follows plays out like a psychedelic nightmare version of the Vinland sagas. Anyone expecting a medieval action fest or even a historical drama from Valhalla Rising may be disappointed, as it's fairly slow in places, and some aspects of the historical timeline don't really add up. It's more of an eerie, atmospheric fable, ripe with religious allegory and sporadic outbursts of violence. In fact, it's very similar in tone to Refn's Only God Forgives, which also split viewers into love or hate camps. I'm obviously in the former camp. Number 2, The Vikings. 1958's The Vikings, directed by Richard Fleischer, stars Kirk Douglas and Tony Curtis as two Viking half-brothers, who happen to be the sons of the legendary Ragnar Lothbrok, played by Ernest Borgnine in an odd casting choice. Eric is raised as a slave, but unbeknownst to him, he is the son of Ragnar. Einar, on the other hand, is raised as Viking royalty, and is the heir to Ragnar's throne. After Eric takes Einar's eye out with the falcon, the two are obviously on bad terms. And then even worse terms when Eric helps the kidnapped Princess Morgana escape the Vikings. After a chase, Ragnar is captured and forced to jump into a dog pit by Morgana's betrothed, King Ella. The brothers team up to seek vengeance for Ragnar and rescue Morgana. But they end up fighting each other for her. When Eric's true identity is revealed, Einar must choose between Morgana and Viking honor. The Vikings may not be the most historically accurate movie on this list, but it captures the romantic notion of the Viking spirit better than the others. It's a classic Hollywood adventure flick, and has all the charm, fighting, and drama that you'd expect from the genre. If you're looking for the romanticized version of Vikings, it doesn't get better than this. Number 1, The 13th Warrior. The best Viking movie according to me is the 1999 film by John McTiernan, based on the novel The Eaters of the Dead by Michael Crichton. It stars Antonio Banderas as Ahmed ibn Fadlan.
Ibn means son of. Ibn.
Banderas' character is based on the real-life Arabic chronicler who traveled with the Vikings and is responsible for much of what we know about them today. However, this movie's parallels to historical events pretty much end there. Fadlan is exiled from Baghdad and is made to serve as an ambassador to the northern lands. After being saved from Tartars by a group of Northmen, Fadlan is enlisted into a mission to rid a Viking kingdom of an ancient, mysterious evil.
The hell are you saying?
The 13th warrior is you.
The Vikings are led by Bulvite and go to Hrothgar's kingdom to seek out the evil. Does that sound familiar? That's right, this is yet another adaptation of Beowulf.
What troubles this place?
The Vikings soon discover that the kingdom is under attack by the Wendel, a group of savage, monstrous humans who haven't been seen for centuries. After an initial confrontation, they go on the offensive and attempt to wipe out the Wendel's leadership. The Wendel retaliate in the final battle, in which the Viking party must face a seemingly insurmountable number of these monstrous humans. What makes this film so much fun to watch is firstly the cast of memorable characters.
Let's go, little brother. It's beginning.
And secondly, John McTiernan does an excellent job of building up suspense, introducing the nameless evil, then slowly revealing the identity of the Wendel, and ultimately culminating in the final confrontation, by which time we care for Fadlan and the Vikings, and truly want to see them triumph. Its pure entertainment value and rewatchability put it at the top spot on this list. So that's it for my top 10 Viking movies. Let me know if you agree with this list, and what other films you'd recommend in the genre. If you like the list, like the vid, and subscribe so you can stay tuned for my next list in the historic warrior theme, the top 10 samurai movies. Thanks. Skull.